So, good day to each and every one of you, class. So, I am Millicent F. Lorico, and our topic for today is all about learning activities, instructional materials, and tools, as well as evaluation instrument. So, are you ready, class, for our lesson for today? All right, so let's get started. But let me let me read the introduction of our discussion proper. How does one determine the appropriate learning activities? The learning activity should serve the purpose for which it is done. The activity must meet the objective set for a particular lesson. A teacher chooses the instructional aids best adapted to a particular learning activity. These aids must suit the purpose intended for mastery of the subject matter. Skills acquisition, skills improvement, and even valuing. So, how do we, as a facilitator, and as an assessor, how do we determine how do we determine the appropriate learning activities that 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 we think best for our learners. So, of course, we have principles in selecting the appropriate learning activities that first begin with objectives that must be aligned with the objectives that must be meet the objectives and pertaining to the subject, because if we don't have objectives, we wouldn't be able to find the appropriate learning activities for our students. And what are the things we should consider in determining the appropriate learning activities for our students? So um if if should always learner-centered approach that the more students can gain experiences, well, the more they are learned learned a lot of things from the teachers or or from the activities that given by the teacher. So principles, especially principles of the teacher. So how it depends upon the teacher. How can we address it? How how can how can she uh, choose the activities inside the classroom? And and second, um, we have criteria, of course. We have standard on choosing the appropriate learning activities, because we are able to give it to our students, like criteria that must suited, that must be aligned, that must be best activities for the students. So, and it de- uh, it depends on their grade level. So we should think that if that learning activities is is suitable for their age, their capacity to think, their their cognitive development, they can adapt it quickly, immediately, as soon as possible. So that is the thing. And also the teaching techniques. So here in teaching techniques, are if we are able to give them give them activities we all know, we, as a teacher, we should know their background and culture of every student we we handle, like their their age and their environment. So so in that case, we are we are susceptible, we are able to find their strengths and weaknesses in every student, and it opens it opens our minds, it allows us to have effective style, to 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 have critical thinking on what effective style we can apply inside the classroom. So did you understand, class? All right. So next slide. So here, determining appropriate learning activities. So let me read it. The learning activities used in teaching should provide learners an opportunity to develop the skills they need to demonstrate their mastery of the material. Of course, because through learning activities as a teacher, as a teacher, um, that will serve as their assessment if they are really learned from from our from our subject matter, from our discussion, from our previous discussion. So this is very one of the effective ways in in showcasing their potentials and learnings through this learning activity. So here, the students, so they have that chance to gain the abilities. So abilities and increase their skills that which prove their understanding of the subject matter through the learning activities employed in teaching. And of course, um, as I said earlier, that in appropriate learning activities, we must be we must be learner-centered approach than teacher-learner approach. That is why learning activities is very important. It has important role in our teaching techniques because it will it will nourish their mind more. It will increase their creativity towards their learning capacity and their learners improvement. So that is one of the ways in determining the appropriate learning activities. So for the different types of learning activities to be reported by Che Gawang.
So now let's proceed to the another topic, which is different types of learning activities. As set to the information indicated in the screen, that learning activities opens an opportunities for every learners to have an academically progress as well as to improve their abilities and skills. So the first type of learning activity is introductory activities, which is known as activity that done in the start of every new lesson. For example, motivational activities wherein the teacher can able to assess what are the prior knowledge of the learners and gives them a quick overview of the lesson. In line of that is an activity usually done at the start of the school year. For example, introducing yourself in the front of class. Next type of learning activities is developmental activities, which describe as activity that can be done to improve and acquire knowledge, such as learned skills, where we can apply it to the good uses of information that already acquired. We can say that developmental activities is strategy to gain knowledge, skills, or abilities. For example, for data gathering, which are reading, field trip, lectures, interviews, and experiments. Additionally, for organizing and summarizing, which are using graphic organizer, jingles, rap, songs, verses, acrostic, PowerPoint presentations. Moreover, for application and creative activities, which are solving real world problems using skills and information related to the curriculum. Next, performance and demonstration of skills mastery. Aesthetic projects created for a real purposes such as model of students, portfolios of best students' works and progress. Furthermore, to explain the learning activities under developmental learning activities is first, the data gathering activities. It is a tools or activities used by the facilitator wherein it engage more the learners to gather information and learnings throughout this activity. This activity also known as hands-on approach to the learning. Best example of it is interview or survey questionnaires, field trip, like I mentioned a while ago, and reading comprehensions, and etc. Proceeding to the next type of learning activities, which is organizing and summarizing activities, wherein the facilitator uses this to illustrate the structure of entire lesson plan by providing and deliberating impromptu activities. Best example of it is the every group activity that done during the discussion or the lesson proper. Moreover, application activities are the activities wherein the teacher present during the application of the concept that been discussed. For example, the teacher able to discuss how to solve algebraic equation. After his or her discussion, she or he assigned such solving problem statements that are connected to the solving of algebraic equations. This is utilized by the teacher to assess his or her student if they were able to know how to apply the learnings that been imparted to their minds. Then, for the second to the last type of learning activities, which is known as creative and expressive activities, wherein these activities are providing the imaginations, expression of feelings, thoughts, and ideas by the learners in the concept that they've acquired after the lesson proper. Best example of it is crafts, arts, or like scrapbooks, drawings, paintings, musical compositions, drama, and dancing. Proceeding to the last type of learning activities, wherein it is known as concluding activities. It is the learner supposedly engage as a part of application of newly acquired knowledge. Best example of this is reflection papers of every topic that's been discussed or reflections of reading texts, providing trivias about the lesson.
So here we go again. So let's proceed to types. Yon. So let's proceed. The two types of learning activities for active learning. So we have four intelligence activities, and what are those? So number one, bodily or kinesthetic, and second naturalist, and third intrapersonal rather, and fourth interpersonal. So here In bodily kinesthetic, so we have, so as a teacher, you can provide them online class with instant feedback, interactive multimedia, tutorial, laboratory, exercise, hands-on task, simulation, interactive, graph, interactive game, video game, website construction. So the battery or kinesthetic requires more on physical movement. So the student or learn best with having physical movement such as exercise, laboratory, interactive, and so on and so forth. So while in naturalist, so from the word itself naturalist, so these students are learn best when they expose to nature and outdoor, such as field trip. So they you can give them activity, or they will enhance their learning through this kind of activities like field trip, scavenger hunt, you know that scavenger hunt, and tour in database creation or search. So these students are learn best when they are exposed in outdoors and nature. So how about in existentialism? We have five, rather. We have five intelligence activities. So, and one of this intelligence activities is existential. So, from the word itself, existentialist. So, the students are able to learn through virtual community service learning or news reporting. So these students are able to to question themselves and others. So like uh, why do we exist? Why do we die? Why did we get here? So if they are able to tackle deep questions about human existence. So this virtual, this mentioned earlier on, this will help to the students gain learning about everything. And while in interpersonal, you can give them reflection via journal or blog, observation, survey, puzzle, self assessment, a digital portfolio, independent search, mind mapping, or graphic design, composing, music, photography, video editing, or role playing. So in interpersonal, it is more on yourself. So this is more on this is the intelligence. This is intelligence that students can learn best when they are the when they are in themselves, in them in the in concerning with their inner thoughts and feelings, as well as mechanisms class. And so these students can learn best when independently. So while in interpersonal, from the word itself, interpersonal, so if interpersonal is more an individual, self-centered, focused on themselves, more on inner thoughts and feelings. Here in interpersonal, it is more on collaboration. So the type of students like this are the type of students like this are learn best when when they are with their friends, peers, or groups, small groups, or with more than 2 or 3 people. So we have a class discussion in interpersonal, formal debate, small group, small group discussion, team project, team competition, learning, groups, case study, peer peer review, email, 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 instant messaging, and online chat. So so those are the examples of interpersonal, existential, and naturalist bodily kinesthetic that can apply that type of learning activities inside the classroom setting. So I hope you learn a lot from the type of learning activities. So thank you for listening.
Okay, moving on to the next subtopic, determining appropriate instructional materials and tools. So, instructional materials including textbooks, educational media, or what we know the library media, print, non-print, and electronic resources. Computer software, videotapes, films, DVDs, and instructional television programs represent fundamental resources for schools to enhance instruction, further the pursuit of knowledge, and provide experiences of educational significance for class groups or for individual students. So, for the determining the appropriate instructional materials and tools for the student, first we must know what are the things that they need or what activities that they also need in every discussion, if it is videotapes or recorded and etc. So if we are going to give them textbooks for them to read, so that is determining the appropriate instructional materials and tools. Okay, moving on to another subtopic, we have different types of instructional materials and tools. So we have realia or whatever you call it, making use of real life representations such as objects in the classroom and learning. So realia is come from the word real life. So that is realia. So it is use of representation and object in the classroom and learning like actual object that you will present in the classroom. So that it is or that's it. Okay. So next we have implementation tips of Realia. Realia can be used to introduce topics or a unit of study. Just like when you are studying the parts of the heart, of course, you need to present the real object or um, big, like what you call it, malaking malaking object na magpe-present ng heart. So you need to present it and to give the student a further understanding about what you are teaching. So that is the implementation or tips. So next we have the realia must be specific to the topic the students are learning. Okay, just like what I have said, if the students are learning about the heart or science, you need to present them the proper materials or realia. So the real objects must be enhanced the objects of the lesson. We have ensured that the items can be handled by the and educate them on the appropriate handling of the object. Realia can be set up as a learning module or a station. There is a need for a guide to help students explore the object. So, ayun, we need to give them proper understanding or the proper way on how to learn and understand your presented object or the realia to the students for their learning process. So, next we have the examples of instructional materials that you can present to your students when you are teaching something. Okay, we also have sound and visual resources. We have listening to music, watching films, videotapes, video cassettes, video discs, video games, microcomputer resources, pictures, and pictorial representation. We also have symbolic and graphic presentation, projectors, viewers, players, recorders, and of course, players and recorders again. So, instructional materials comes in many different types, just like what I have said. And it will only matter depende sa subject or kung paano mo gustong matuto ang iyong students. Kung gusto mo silang matuto ng realization, of course, you need to present them like films, movies in the form of videotapes, video cassettes, sound and visual resources, just like that. And if you want your students to learn like modern, of course, you need to present something new like video games, microcomputer resources. And if you want them to have an insight on like pictographic, just like that, you can show them pictures or an pictorial representation, symbolic and graphic representation. So that is the different types of instructional materials and tools that we can present to our students. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Good morning. Now let us proceed to the media sources. The first one is the electronic media. So what is this? These are the media that use electronics or electrometrical, which means for the audience to access the content. So this is in contrast to static media, which today are most often created digitally but do not require electronics to be accessed by the end user in the printed form. So example of electronic media are TV, radio, and social media. Next is teleconference. So it is a live audio or audio-visual meeting with two or more participants. So with the ability to teleconference remote teams in an organization in which wherever you are, can collaborate and communicate, like I said, even when geographically dispersed. So the process of this involves the technology more sophisticated than a simple two-way connection. Examples, this is the one that we use every day in our class, the Google Meets, Zooms, and Microsoft Teams. And lastly is printed media. So printed media is one of the oldest and basic forms of mass communication. It includes, example is newspapers, weeklies, magazines, monthlies, and other forms of printed journals. So a basic understanding of the print media is essential in the study of mass communication. Next is, there are two types of television programmings. First is educational televisions. These are the ones that use brief engaging episodes and lesson learned from commercials. So example is, that research indicates that watching Sesame Street increases children's verbal IQ test scores. So this is just one of the many well-crafted television programs that result in greater educational achievement. Next is instructional television programs for special teaching purposes. PowerPoint presentation is the example of this is the one that we use typically in our lessons with creative images that we present on our screen. Next is the overhead projector. So it is a teaching device that throws an enlarged image of a transparency on a surface above and behind the person using it. So alterations or addition can be made to the material under transparency while the projector is in use. Now, let's go ahead to the principles in the selection of instructional materials. So, lately, there has been noted an increase in the use of electronic media to supplement traditional printed materials. So, it is therefore a basic requirement for both teachers and students to understand and apply the process and symbol systems of electronic media. So, these are the basic principles to consider in using these technologies effectively in the classroom. So, first one is all instructional materials are aids to instruction, but they do not replace the teacher. So, since instructional materials will serve as a guide only for the teacher, since we use it to basically present our lesson, so the instructional materials will not replace as the teacher, since this will serve only as a guide for them to be able to present their lesson properly, also in a creative way. And then next is choose the best instructional materials that suits the instructional objective. So for us, or for the teachers, you have to choose, or as a future educator, we have to also learn or to choose the best instructional materials that we can use in order for us to follow the good, or to have a good flow of the lesson, or also we can follow the learning objectives that we have in our lesson. Next is avoid using too many materials that will confuse the students. Basically, you have to only focus on certain materials that we most likely be needed in our lesson, since having too much materials which cannot be needed or can be only accessed on our lesson will bring confusion to the students, since it will question them that what materials should be used when we only needed certainly one or the focus materials that we use on our lesson. And next is check instructional materials before the class starts to be sure it is working properly. So to avoid interruption during your discussion, or to avoid any to avoid the attention of the students to another form, so you have to make sure to avoid this. You have to make sure that it is working properly to avoid the interruption. For example, in the middle of the lessons, that one of your materials or your materials is not working. So to avoid interruptions, you have to make sure it is working properly and there are no errors in your instructional materials. So for results, aside from by the following general utilization guides on the use of media given, so first one is you have to learn how to use the instructional materials. Since you are the one who made the instructional materials and it comes from your idea, so you have to know and you have to first learn. Also, if you you get the idea of your instructional to someone else, so you have to learn to use this so you can have a good presentation of the instructional materials. Next is prepare the introductory remarks, question, or initial comments that may need to increase motivation. So you have to prepare this in advance, or you have to practice so you can increase a good class, a good start of the class, or initial things that you need to do to increase the hype on the class or the motivations. And also, you have to provide a conducive learning environment. So you have to provide a learning environment. You have to have a conducive learning environment in which you can have interaction with the students, a good interaction, and also good communication with the students. So, and next is you have to explain the objectives of a lesson. So you have to discuss to them the objectives, or what is the purpose of your lesson, so they can have the idea on the flow of your lessons, and they can know at the end of the lessons that you have followed the objectives. Next is stress what is to be watched or listen carefully. So you have to instruct them that on your lesson, on your lesson, you have to know them that this part, on the middle part, you have to watch or listen this carefully, since for example that is needed to be lesson, or you have a question that need to be asked, so that they can remember and also take down notes. And then next is state what the students are expected to do with the information that they were learning. So you have to state, or you have to know them that what they need to do, or they need to expect while the information that they learn at the end of the lesson. And also lastly is to summarize or review the experience. So you have to summarize or review the experiences based on your lesson, for the students to know the experience.
In selecting appropriate evaluation, the teacher must carefully analyze all facets of a project when choosing appropriate evaluation tools that meet program's tasks. So, in order to conduct an accurate review, it is essential to ask the employees questions like, what did you think, or how do you feel? So, the assessments tool can be chosen based on the program's outcomes to accurately gauge its level of success. So, here are some instructions for evaluation instruments. So, the first one is write down all the variables, participants, instructional materials, training instruments, and the level of participants' ability prior and throughout training or intervention to determine the project's full scope and range for evaluation. So here, in the second one is to determine which resources are accurately being used, and choose a straightforward instrument. So preferably a survey that asks participants about their current attitude toward their training. So what to ask and utilize will be determined by the evaluation. To assess the overall effectiveness of the program, all participants will receive the same test for it to be fair to have fair result as well as. And for the third one is always review the administrative requirements for the project or program, including what is required of participants and their overall goals. So for instance, participants will know and understand how to reach students' proper essay formatting using the 6 streets method, or participants will know how to use all the steps in the student's peer coaching method independently. So understand and knowing the intended outcomes will help choose the kind of evaluation tools required throughout the project phases. So the fourth one is create a survey to ask the participants what information they will require at the project's conclusion in order to continue or advance the project. For instance, if the project find out what they will want on a personal and professional level to improve their teaching techniques, such as increased self-esteem or new curriculums resources. So here in the fifth one is analyze the results of the requirements assessment and survey to choose the best evaluation method. If if more time is required for planning the implementation, the evaluation tools must allow for more information, such as through surveys, checklists, and questionnaires. If the teachers are responsible for evaluating the curriculum, choose numbered scoring instruments that will enable them to make their own evaluation using predetermined criteria at various level of proficiency, such as needs of improvement, showing improvement, proficient, and mastery. So here, and the sixth one is conducting a survey. Explore the internet for each identified that have already been used in similar companies or for more similar initiatives. So here for the seventh one is an example when reporting on scoring instruments, indicate what things to score such as curriculum or resource. And when reporting on surveys, list the surveys will examine such as attitude or independence. So, a pre-assessment is necessary to choose the right evaluation tools since it enables teachers to the students to discover what is already known about a certain topic or subject. In order for students to engage in questioning, articulating, reasoning, and theorizing to construct a new information appropriate to their knowledge. So as it guides the teacher and the students to the next learning direction or style. So, right, right. So, and now, we are down to the pre-assessment knowledge. So, student enter the classroom with pre-existing knowledge. These are abilities, convictions, and attitudes that affect how people pay attention to interpret and organize new information. So, their knowledge will all depend on how they process and integrate new information. So, the dependence of new information, the competence of new prior knowledge, and expertise is widely acknowledged. It can be helpful to design educational activities based on students' strengths and admitted deficiencies by understanding what students already know and can perform when they enter the classroom or before they start a new area of studying. So depending on the style, of course, the informity of outcomes and the availability and nature of extra materials and alternatives, the assessment of prior knowledge and skill results in a variety of potential responses of the students. For instance, if the majority of the class has misconceptions or has a poor grasp of a subject that is necessarily preconditioned. So this may be addressed in a class by giving further instructions or links to resources that students could use independently. So, individual students lacking many of the prerequisite skills of knowledge could be and it could be encouraged to the prerequisite courses or warned that they need to develop proficiency in areas on their own. If the majority of students demonstrate proficiency in a skill that is part of the plan, such may be dropped and replaced with another skill that they have not yet developed or adjusted to the level of complexity or time to spend on. So So evaluating prior knowledge enables both the teacher and students to focus their time and energy in the most efficient ways. So and now we are down to examples of methods for assessing prior knowledge and skills. So first is concept inventories. These are numerous different or short answer exams or multiple choice exam that concentrate the core ideas in a particular field. So these exams are intended to identify deliberating misconceptions. So the second one is concept maps. when the types of causal theories and interaction among ideas are essential to the comprehension of the course. Concept map exercises can show the underlying structure or organization of a student's knowledge of a concept or constellation of concepts. So the third one is self-assessment probes. Students are students are asked to evaluate and comment on their level of knowledge and proficiency across a number of items in these indirect techniques of a self-assessment. So this can include prerequisite knowledge and abilities for the course as well as topics that will be covered in it. So next is um, formative assessment. So this formative assessment consists of questioning, discussions, learning activities, feedbacks, conference, interviews, and student reflections. So formative assessment basically is a process used by the teacher and students during instruction that offers feedback for potential adjustment to ongoing teaching and learning to assist learners to enhance their achievements or intended instructional outcomes. So formative evaluation takes place in short cycle or on a minute by minute basis in the classroom. So this assessment is typically not graded or used in involves feedback that is descriptive in um, character so that students may understand what they need to do next to improve their learning and are help in that process. So there is some reason to use formative assessment. Why is it important to use formative assessment in the classroom? So a fun and effective method of teaching is formative assessment. After learning the fundamentals, one can use it in a variety of ways that makes learning entertaining for both teacher and students. So for the last, we are now down to summative assessment. Basically, summative assessment give teachers the ability to examine and grade their students learning at a certain in grade their certain moment in time. So the grade given has an impact on how the student's degree turns out in the end. So the most vital step in completing any kind of assessment or test is to determine the goals posed by taking a look at first, the particular specification of the assignment, including guidelines for format, presentation, and structure. So, second one, the assessments of scoring criteria, and the course's intended learning outcomes, or what the tutor expects the students to be able to demonstrate by the end of the course. So that's all. Thank you.